Menschheit ist im Begriff, ihre eigene Biosphäre zu zerstören. Der Planet Erde wird somit kein Habitat für Menschen mehr sein. Eine Mission Crew simuliert hier in unserem Testlabor die Konstruktion und Einrichtung eines Habitats in lebensfeindlicher Umgebung. Aber die Frage stellt sich hierbei, was ist ein Habitat?
Naja, diese Frage ist vielleicht zu allgemein. Zunächst sollte gefragt werden, wessen Habitate interessieren. Habitate also für wen oder was. Ein Fisch wird sein Habitat ganz anders beschreiben als wir Menschen. Und selbst wir werden jeder und jede eine unterschiedliche Definition und Vorstellung unseres Habitats haben.
Die Frage, wie groß oder klein wir uns unsere Habitate vorstellen, ist nicht unwichtig. Geht es um den konkreten Lebensraum oder um die ganze Biosphäre?
Sind Habitate nicht nur kognitive
Der Wandel in eine bewusst fossile Kultur, das ist ja eigentlich der Kern dessen. Wir reden ja immer nur in einer Oberflächlichkeit von dem, was nicht ergeht. Ja, also wir dürfen kein Öl mehr verbrennen und dann haben wir immer eine Verzichtsdiskussion, in die wir uns streiten. Aber wir könnten es auch wenden im Sinne eines positiveren Gedankens, dass wir eine höhere Lebensqualität haben werden, nachdem wir aufhören, diese Art von Naturausbeutung, die auch in den fossilen Energien steckt. Das ist eine ganz andere Art und Weise zu denken.
Habitate als politische Räume oder nur als biologische Räume, oder sind das Prozesse der Entropie nicht gehen kann? Die Frage ist, wenn wir hier kommunizieren,
politischen Habitaten, besetzten Raum zum Beispiel, besetzten Platz zum Beispiel.
Das besetzte Netz sind wir eigentlich schon ein digitales Habitat.
Politischen Habitaten, im besetzten Raum zum Beispiel.
Existenzfreie politische Ideen. Oder meinst du ideologisch besetzte Territorien? Das natürliche Habitat und künstliche Habitat.
But of course it gets much more messy when you're dealing with something like an ecosystem. And when you're dealing with it from within, where everything that you do, everything that you leverage is not just something that, yeah, let's try and then we see what happens, but let's try and let's see if we're going to survive. It becomes a
Verbrennungen im wahrsten Sinne des Wortes, sondern in Erhaltungen, in Kreisläufen, zirkulären Ökologien, in wieder
Think back to an experience in your life you shared with water. Were you caught in the rain? Swimming in the ocean? Walking on a frozen lake? What did it feel like? Did you get wet? What did it sound like? A fundamental paradigm in our research at Floating University is to emulate Mother Earth's water cycles rather than mimic corporate man's linear sewer pipes. Water will not fall beneath the streets like garbage into landfills. Rather, water flows down the drain, undergoes biological filtration, and flows back out the spout. Floating University is located in a polluted rainwater basin in Berlin. It is a place for asking questions. Experimental water systems are constructed at every possible avenue. Water cascades down the laboratory stairs and spirals through a series of bathtubs. Filled with plants, mushrooms, biofilms, sand, activated carbon, mollusks, and bacteria. A membrane filter turns rainwater into drinking water. A moving bed reactor uses bacteria to break down complex compounds. We are trying to make the polluted basin water clean enough to swim in. But we aren't NASA.
Tempelhofer Feld in Berlin, which is probably most of you know, but it's a former airport that's now closed. And so the rainwater basin was built to take the water from the airport when it would rain, so it wouldn't flood the tarmac. And so whenever it rains now, even though the airport is closed, the water goes in this rainwater basin. And also it takes water from this big road, which is called Columbia Dam. And so we had a water recycling system to take this water, which is pretty polluted. I mean, there's a lot of trash in it. We also had the water utility, the Berliner Wasserbetriebe, test the water, and it had really high levels of Enterococcus and E. coli, which is normal. And so pretty much the main source of pollution right now comes from the road. And so it's things like any unburned oil that comes off the car or vulcanized rubber from the tires. And the water filtration system that we built was in 9 different bathtubs, and it was hanging from the ceiling of the water laboratory tower. We had all these different structures built in the basin. There was an auditorium and a bar and a kitchen, and then there was this water laboratory. And so there was a circular staircase going up the water laboratory, and there were all these bathtubs with different filter mediums in it. There was a filter medium with activated carbon. There was one with sand. There was one with mushroom mycelium, the group pink mushrooms. And then there were different halophytic plants that are capable of taking soaps and salts out of the water and things like this. And so the basin water is going through one of those, and then another set of bathtubs also was taking the gray water that we produced in the university from washing our dishes, mainly. And then this water, that filtration system, it was going through a series of similar filters, and then we were, at the very end of that one, we had constructed something called a moving bed reactor. And this was a series of different tubes that have water and air in them. And then there's different, in each tube, there were 6 tubes in total. There's a different cluster of bacteria that grow inside of them, and they specialize at taking the pollution, at degrading the pollution that's in the water. And so the water that came out of that was pretty close to swimmable water if we would have had more time. Cool video. If we would have had more time, I think we could have proven that it was water that you could swim in. But it was capable of, we used it to water the plants in our greenhouse. And so we had a greenhouse where we were growing 35 varieties of different tomatoes. And the water went through the filtration system, and then we used it to water the plants. And then so Phil was saying, maybe here I have a map. So maybe this is making more sense. So this is the upcoming, future version floating university. It's not the official master plan, but it will look something like this. But this is the rainwater basin, so I'm talking about. And here, everything's opposite. But here is where the water is coming in to the basin. And over here is where it's coming out. And our water filtration system was based here. So we were piping water from the basin into the water filtration system. And then we also had this kitchen here. And then our greenhouse was over here, so that the filtered water was moving here. And then some of the filtered water was going out. And from here it goes to the canal system and then to the Spree River.
Yeah. How many people are you working with there for the moment, or?
We're an association, a Verein, and there's about 40 of us in the Verein.
Okay. And is there somebody living there?
No, no one's living there.
No, you're just traveling back and forth. So you have to end at the day or whatever, and then you leave again. So there's nobody in the area. Okay. So.
I think there's some people have some dreams of living there. Yeah, I think it'd be nice.
That would change the habitat, no? We're talking so much about habitats.
Yeah, it would definitely change the habitat.
Yeah.
As a artist who does these public projects, there's been quite a few projects where I've lived at them. But I didn't really want to at this one because in the past I feel sometimes like an animal at the zoo. Yeah,
you have visitors probably who makes people of you living there.
And you're always the host.
Yes.
Yeah.
I understand. I mean, in your previous projects, did you have lots of guests, like trying to,
Yes, in my previous projects, yes, lots of guests. And also this one. I mean, the first year we did it, we had 10,000 people come.
Oh, wow.
It was just, yeah. So.
How can you work? I mean, if you have so many guests, it's hard to realize the project itself, right?
I think that's exactly what happened. Yeah, I don't know. I found that all the time I was just talking with people and explaining what was going on. I mean, it was cool because so many people were excited about it, but I don't think it's possible to work. There was a lot of times where I would be working after it had closed at dark.
This kind of user mentality we also have in the web. We were talking about the web as being a kind of digital habitat for lots of people. There are more in the web than people having water, drinking water, to have some kind of profit. Projects that have profit. I don't know if you saw our what is the profit of this mission, for example, was one of the questions I stated, because I know that journalists would do so. Let's say, what's the profit? Why do you do this? You spend money to go there and you want to see something. So what do we get out of it now? Not maybe 200 years, but now. Yeah. So this is. How long are so I have a question to you. How long are the guests usually visiting you? Are they staying for one day, or are they just making some pictures and leaving again?
People who come to Floating University?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say it's a combination of, most guests are just coming for one day and making some pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are coming, we have a public program where we have different workshops, classes, lectures, things like that. And some people come back repeatedly for these types of things, or they'll participate in one workshop, for example, that's a week long. And then there are also a lot of artists and not just artists, but all sorts of different people that are involved in the project. And when they're usually doing something, somebody who's like in there in a capacity similar to mine. And I think that these are the people that I end up getting to know and spending time with the most. Yeah. We're all kind of guests in a way. Yeah. Yes, if that makes sense.
Well, sure. Yeah.
I'd like to come back to this question of relationship with water, because when you said that, Catherine, it reminded me that I think there are people, like, let's say, who have adopted specific rituals with water. When you look at the Indian river, the Ganges. I don't know how the English pronunciation is. So I think these people, who go there to bathe, they really connect with the water, with that specific water. And I think this is just one famous example. And I wondered, how would you describe your relationship, or how would you like to have it, or how do you think, how would you describe it?
I really enjoy, most recently, I started going to Hawaii and going surfing. And I really like being in the water, just like completely in it. And I always find that with the ocean, you realize like how powerful it is and how insignificant you are. And I think that it's something terrifying about that. But also, one thing I love about water is how playful you can be in it. Usually, like when I'm surfing, one of the beaches I'm surfing at, there's always sea turtles that are swimming in the water, and then they also go and like lay on the beach in the sun. But they're also riding the waves, like they're playing in some sort of way. And after I go surf, I usually like swim around in the water, but in a really playful way. And so I like that there's just this sheer movement of the waves coming in. It manipulates your body in some sort of way that you can enjoy it. There's a pleasure in that. And so I think that that's maybe a little bit my relationship with water, with it being this like really intense force that can drown you, but also this really playful like thing that's you're having less gravity, for example, with it. So yeah, I'm curious about, when you think about, I ask people, I've done some interviews where I've asked people about their relationship with water. And experiences they have with water. And I think it's interesting to think about what it would be like to be in space and what your experience with water would be like in space. Just when you were talking, for example, before about like recycling urine, or how do you take a shower, or what's the process of washing the dishes. So there must be certain water rituals in space that would be unique. You know, if you asked an astronaut, they would probably have something really interesting to say.
I think, I mean, from what I know from astronauts, is that they're really all, how can I say it? They get very sensitive to these to the fact that their resources are so limited and that they're so dependent on them, and that, you know, it's everything. It's the envelope of the spaceship, and then because outside is death basically if you don't protect yourself. But everything what's inside is really, you know, one really needs to attend to in a very 100% basically. Everything matters.
I would like to go back, you know, somehow from space back to our Earth habitat. I don't know what you think, Catherine, about also water being the habitat for microbes, them, and also having a very individual kind of character. So I think each water that we meet in different circumstances also interacts, for instance, with animals or humans that bathe in it very differently. How do you look at this interaction between the microbes that are living in water and that somehow therefore interact with our body when we bathe in it or when we drink it? Did this appear to you?
Yeah, definitely. This is something I've thought about, especially with drinking water in different scenarios, you know, that this is a way of getting that bacteria in your system. Like if you're going, for example, in a hike somewhere and you're taking water from a lake, or if you go, I don't know, to some, like I'm from Detroit and there's some areas there in the inner city where the water is pretty, but it's just interesting to think about like how you can make your flora really diverse by taking these different samples of water and ingesting them. With this moving bed reactor, this was the exact example of water culturing different microbes. So the way that it worked is that there were like these 6 different columns of water, and the water would start out, like, let's say you have the dirty water, and it moves through the first column, and inside the column, there's all these little foam cubes and air being pushed through the water. And it's actually, in German, it's called a Wirbelbed reactor. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but Wirbel is this, like the tornado in water, the vortex. And so all these cubes are moving around like that. And the cubes are like the beds, the like habitat for the bacteria that will call it like culture within this one column. And so there will be a different type of bacteria that cultures, like self-organizes, which I think is really cool, in the first column, then in the second column, then the third column, then the fourth column. Like the scientist I work with, Erwin Nolde, he's great. And he said, like one analogy he gave is that it's like you have a loaf of bread moving through and through the columns. And in the first column, there's like an elephant who can almost eat the whole loaf of bread. And in the next column, you have like a goat that can eat a slice. And by the time you get down to the very end, you have like these little ants that are just eating the crumbs. But to turn this analogy, wouldn't know the names of all the different microbes, but this is how the microbes are functioning. That the microbes in the beginning specialize to take apart these like big parts of the molecule. And by the end, they're breaking apart just smaller parts of the molecule. And for me, it was so amazing to think about that the bacteria will self-organize themselves to do this. You know, it's not like you have to say, oh, I will pour into the first column this type and second column this type. And the whole reason that it functions in that way is because there are these cubes and they're prevented from moving from one tank to the next the way that it's designed. There's like the water goes through a tube and the tube has holes in it, but the cube can't fit in. The holes are too small. And so that's how it helps it specialize. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great example that you just gave on the self-assembly ability of microbes and how we can somehow cooperate with this agency that more and more and makes us understand how connected we are. And how important it is to understand these multiple connections. And I think, it was great that you gave us some technical insight also in the process of your system and how microbes are involved in it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm always amazed by the microbiome. I've heard these like two facts. One, that there's more cells in our body that are not us than are us. And then also it's like, if you added them all up, it would be like the weight of an organ. It's amazing. And that the bacteria, it's not just in our guts, it's like they're in our cells, you know? And they're the ones, they're responsible for the whole process of us being alive and being able to grow and to eat and digest and move through the world. You know, it's not us, it's these microbes that are doing it.
Technology is only part of the answer to solving our problems with water. What's missing is our relationship with water. Where did it go? Do you remember? How will life change as our relationship to water transforms? How can we be radical dreamers of utopia while keeping our feet on the ground or in the water, as it may be?
Mission Payload Specialist Strecke T-3. Die nun Transformierten begeben sich zurück in ihr ursprüngliches Milieu. Dabei durchlaufen sie alle 3 Phasen erneut, beginnend mit der Trennungsphase. Over and out.
Ja, wir haben sehr viel über ESA gesprochen, Emotional Support Animal. Wie fühlt man sich so in der Rolle und wie weit bist du dich da schon assimiliert? Und das andere ist natürlich, was ich gerne wissen möchte oder was viele gerne wissen wollen wahrscheinlich, wie hat sich das Projekt aufgebaut, das du mit Lucy zusammen machst?
Ja, das Einfühlen in jetzt diesen Zustand des im Weltraumseins oder des Reisens, auch in der Form der Andersartigkeit, ist sehr herausfordernd und ist auch sehr lustvoll. Zum einen mag ich Science Fiction und glaube, dass heute offenbar Themen der Science Fiction, also die Erweiterung des Raums, die Erweiterung der Zeit, drängend sind und gleichzeitig damit natürlich aber auch Fragen der Beschreibung dessen, was menschlich ist und der Übergänge dessen, wo Menschlichkeit erweitert wird, also wie im Sinne von Cyborg oder im Sinne von einem technisch mediatisierten Körper. Und ein Stück weit geht es natürlich immer auch um Andersartigkeit. Ich glaube, es wäre schwierig, den anthropozentrischen Standpunkt völlig zu verleugnen, der in sowas immer auch ein Stück weit drin ist.
Wir kommen jetzt langsam zum Ende dieses Streaming-Marathons und damit aber auch zum Ende dieses Labors, zum Habitat. Barbara Imhoff, du bist ja Architektin und arbeitest schon seit vielen Jahren mit künstlichen oder gebauten Habitaten. Aus deiner Sicht, was würdest du als Habitat bezeichnen und was würdest du eher als Kommunikationsraum bezeichnen?
Also wie du sagst, es ist relativ schwierig. Man kann jetzt sagen, das Habitat ist eigentlich so eine Umwelt für sagen, ein kleines Ökosystem oder für so spezielle Tiere, Pflanzen, wie auch immer, die jetzt da gemeinsam leben und die sozusagen auch voneinander abhängig sind. Man kann das natürlich aber ganz viel erweiterter sehen und sagen, na gut, es gibt sozusagen verschiedene Kommunikationsmöglichkeiten, ja, also auch die Pflanzen, Tiere oder wie auch immer, da gibt es ja auch, die kommunizieren ja auch miteinander. Also es könnte auch so gesehen in abstrakterer Form oder übertragener Form ein Kommunikationsraum sein. Aber natürlich aus der Praxis, aus der ich komme, aus dem Berufsfeld, ich würde jetzt nicht, also ich würde mit Habitat sofort etwas anderes eben verbinden, zum Beispiel eben eine Raumstation.
Mhm. Da möchte ich gleich nachhaken. Du arbeitest ja jetzt gerade mit der Liquify Systems Group an der Konstruktion des Habitats für die neue Weltraumstation. Ist das richtig?
Also das Mondmodul.
Was gibt es da für einen Zeithorizont oder wie weit ist das schon oder wie viel darfst du überhaupt erzählen?
Ein bisschen was darf ich erzählen. Also es ist geplant eine Station, die heißt Gateway, um den Mond zu errichten, also in einem Mondorbit zu errichten, so um genauer zu sein. Und die Station heißt Gateway, weil sie eben ein Tor auf der einen Seite sein soll auf die Mondoberfläche, aber auch weiter zum Mars. Mhm. Also wir sind da in dieser Position, sind wir schon sehr weit entfernt. Also der Mond ist, ich weiß nicht, 350.000 Kilometer entfernt. Also, und wir sind ungefähr, sozusagen, mit Gateway kommen wir dem Mond 2000 Kilometer nahe. Ja, es ist eine elliptische Bahn, die da beschrieben wird. Und da sind wir aber schon so weit entfernt mit dieser Station, dass wir eigentlich uns spezielle Maßnahmen ergreifen müssen, um uns vor der Strahlungsumwelt zu schützen. Man kann deshalb auch ganz gut den Flug zum Mars trainieren, also weil das eine ähnliche Umwelt ist. Also
ist das dann nicht noch schlimmer? Also das ist
auf dem Weg zum Mars ist es das Gleiche. Das ist sozusagen nicht geschützt vom Magnetfeld der Erde. Also es gibt Strahlung, es gibt auch die Mikrometeoriten, also es ist alles, es gibt Schwerelosigkeit, also das würde man all diese Parameter hätte man auf einer Reise zum Mars. Und gleichzeitig braucht man aber, oder ein Szenario, man benötigt es nicht unbedingt, aber ein Szenario, um am Mond landen zu können, ist eben so eine kleine Zwischenstation zu haben, zum Umsteigen in eine Landefähre.
Okay, also es gibt dort Landefähren, wo man dann auf den Mond gehen kann.
Das
war meine Frage, warum macht man das nicht gleich am Mond? Weil das wäre wahrscheinlich schon ein bisschen einfacher. Ne?
Ja, es gibt eben verschiedene Szenarien. Man kann auch direkt zum Mond fliegen, aber auch wenn man sich an die Apollo-Missionen erinnert, vor über 50 Jahren, die haben auch sozusagen dieses kleine Transfermodul gehabt. Ja, es gab ja immer sozusagen den dritten Mann, der sozusagen alleine als einsamster Mensch des Mondes, der Welt, um den Mond gekreist ist. Und das war eigentlich wie so ein Gateway, so wie so eine Zwischenstation.
Also
das heißt, das Szenario war so ähnlich.
Also das ist einfach der Lift zum Mond quasi. Oder woanders hin. Also das heißt, das braucht es, weil die Schwerkraft oder die Gravitation des Mondes ist ja jetzt nicht so stark. Das heißt aber, trotzdem braucht es diesen Umstieg.
Naja, da geht's um, das sind viele, ja, das sind viele Dinge. Das sind immer, weil es das eine ist, sagen, was habe ich für eine Rakete, wie viel Masse kann ich da mitnehmen? Also von der Erde weg ist eigentlich das Schwierigste, dieser Schwerkraft entfliehen. Und wie kann ich dann, kann ich genug mitnehmen, um dann noch sozusagen zusätzlich zu so einem Habitat oder was auch immer ich dahin transportieren will, auf den Mond auch noch eine Landefähre etc. etc. Und dann muss man natürlich, was mache ich dann? Will ich landen mit diesem gesamten Apparat oder lasse ich einen Teil in der Umlaufbahn und lande wirklich nur mit der Fähre? Also das sind lauter so Überlegungen, die man da halt anstellt.
Aber das Habitat, an dem du arbeitest oder deine Gruppe arbeitet, ist tatsächlich das Habitat in der Umlaufbahn. Also
genau, also ja, gemeinsam mit meinen Kolleginnen, also von Liquifa, arbeiten wir eben an dem, das heißt International Habitat Module für die nächste Raumstation für Gateway. Aber wir arbeiten natürlich, das heißt, da glaubt man immer, wir machen das da irgendwie alleine, aber das ist natürlich ein riesiger Kollaborationsapparat mit vielen Partnern, wo wir eben eine kleine Position haben, aber eine, wie soll ich sagen, eine bedeutende in dem Sinn, dass, weil sie zum ersten Mal in Europa vorkommt, dass eben da Architekten und Architektinnen dran arbeiten. Das ist also schon der erste Schritt, kreativ andersdenkende Menschen in diese Planungsprozesse einzubauen, weil du das beobachten kannst. Wird das wichtiger? Ja, es wird wichtiger. Trotzdem ist sozusagen in so einer extremen Umgebung ist einfach diese Maschine mit lebenserhaltenden Systemen extrem wichtig. Also das System Mensch, also das sage ich jetzt bewusst, wird halt sozusagen in ein System Technik gepackt und die müssen irgendwie funktionieren. Wobei halt viele Ingenieure auch der Meinung sind, dass das eigentlich zu viel des Guten ist. Besser ist es, nur mit robotischen Hilfsmitteln Exploration zu betreiben, oder man wartet eben sozusagen auf so eine Art genetische, längere Veränderung des Menschen, damit er sich dann eben anpassen kann, dieser sehr speziellen Umwelt.
Das Cyborg.
Und das wäre sozusagen dieser Connex zum Leib hier. Ja. Also, oder dass es eben auch sozusagen das bestimmte, nicht, wie kann man sozusagen menschliche Gene so modifizieren, dass sie die Strahlung besser aushalten, etc. Also das sind schon so, wie soll ich sagen, kommt manchmal auf in so kleinen Nebengesprächen, sage ich mal, in dieser Umwelt des Weltraumbusiness. Also eigentlich eine neue Spezies zu entwickeln, für die das natürliche Habitat der Weltraum ist. Ne? Das wäre eigentlich so die Zielvorstellung. Damit sind wir am Ende dieses Streams. Ich hoffe, es war interessant. Das ist die nächste Live-Übertragung aus dem nächsten Testlab. Das Thema wird intelligent sein. Wir bleiben bei den Riesenthemen. Ja, und ich hoffe, wir sehen uns bald wieder. Dankeschön und tschüss.